Here's Bill King.
Kind of newsy in Tucson. The website is wildcatsportsreport.com. Brad Allis is with us. Hey, Brad, I guess we all saw this coming. I didn't necessarily know it would happen yesterday or any day now, but locally, was that the feeling?
Yeah, we really thought something might happen over the weekend, and once kind of noon or 1 o'clock came yesterday, we thought we were fine. I was in front of my grill, getting ready to grill up dinner when I got word from one of our writers that it went down, and within 20 minutes, I was racing to the university for the press conference.
To me, that job has always been a better job than the output, than what you get out of it. And again, we can go back to Dick Tomey and look at some good times, the 93 season, etc. But generally speaking, it's kind of been labeled an underachiever, never been to the Rose Bowl. Well, what's the missing formula? What needs to happen?
What you need is a guy, and again, right now Arizona's a 6 or 7 win program who probably has legitimate aspirations to be a 9 win program. We're not fooling ourselves to think we're Alabama or USC, but I think we can be maybe where UCLA and Cal have been off and on over the last 20 years, and the ability is to build upon success. Dick Tomey had this team rolling in 93, 94, cover boys on SI, and they underachieved, losing to Utah in the Freedom Bowl when they only gave up 84 yards. Dick Tomey goes 12-1, and can't build upon the success. Tried to go after a bunch of big-time recruits, and it didn't work. And 2 years later, he's out of the program. And Mike Stoops was within one play of having Arizona as the front runner from the Rose Bowl just 3 years ago when they lost in double overtime to Oregon, and since then has put back-to-back average recruiting classes. You need someone who can build upon their success. You've got to try to put a wall around Phoenix. Mike Stoops is great at recruiting Phoenix 8 years ago. Well, 8 years later, Phoenix is cranking out 4- and 5-star recruits when it was cranking out 1, and they're not keeping any of them. ASU's not keeping any of them, so the door's wide open. So you need a guy who can wall off Arizona, continue to recruit Texas and California, and frankly, go into the Rust Belt, go into back east like basketball has, and says, hey, it's 70 degrees here in February. Come play football here. We got beautiful co-eds, beautiful facilities. And, oh, yeah, now that the new structure of the Pac-12, we've only got to beat USC to compete for Pac-12 championships.
Give me a thought of who Greg Byrne would target. Would he, for example, like he did at Mississippi State, Dan Mullen, take a top assistant, or the job resume? What does this coach need to possess to get this job?
I don't think there's any one formula for it. I frankly think Arizona, and I apologize to our SEC brethren who I know listen religiously, I think Arizona's a better job than Mississippi State, so I think you can target a better guy. I think in a perfect world, he's looking for his Lute Olson. And for people who don't remember, back in 1983, Lute Olson was a couple years removed from a Final Four. Arizona was a program that was in far worse shape than the football program is, and he was able to get an established veteran coach, at the time fairly young. We forget that he was only in his late 40s, early 50s then, to come and basically find a destination job, a place to raise his family and eventually retire. I think he'd love to get a guy like that, whether it be a guy who's coaching at a smaller school, or frankly, maybe a guy who's born to make a lateral or even slightly a downward move in terms of wins and losses, to come to a nice little community, great weather, in a place where a lot of people like to raise their families. I think that would be the ideal situation. Problem is maybe some guys you think, while difficult to land, maybe you could, with the changing landscape in all these conferences, maybe a guy who's looking for a step up in conference, if not a step down in initial wins, might not be a step down in conference, with TCU's moving and Boise's moving, and you never know. I mean, we could suddenly see him in the kid at Louisiana Lafayette's a very interesting prospect, but heck, they could be Conference USA before we know it, or something like that. So it's a crazy landscape, and that may play a factor But I think he'd like to get probably an established head coach, mid-40s, who can come in and maybe be here 10 or 15 years.
You know, a guy, when you talk about that, who I think would do a very good job, man, he's had chances and he's not left before, and that's Troy Calhoun at the Air Force.
That is a guy that's already been mentioned. I've mentioned Kevin Sumlin already, a guy who's only 47, but who knows? Houston could be Big 12 a month from now. There is the rumblings, and I think it's very premature, but apparently Peterson at Boise State and Greg Byrne have a very good personal relationship. So that is a name that you will hear. I don't know how realistic. If you don't leave Boise for Michigan or some of those jobs, I'm not sure he comes to Arizona. But that one won't go away. I can tell you that until Peterson comes out and denies it. I think you'll see, obviously you'll hear a lot of older coaches, Beach, Rodriguez being mentioned. I've even heard Fulmer's name, but I think this is going to be a crazy one. You may hear some weird names crop up, like some assistants in the NFL who maybe isn't your first thought. It's going to be fun. We've compiled a list already. We're getting ready to write profiles of 35 different coaches around America, so we're having fun with this. And hopefully the fan base of maybe 6 weeks from now can have a coach they can be happy about. Mike Stoops was the right guy 8 years ago. He was the first time Arizona football got a big name. Previous to that, you got a retread and a coach no one knew about from Hawaii. They don't do this often in Arizona, only 3 coaches since the late 80s. But it should be interesting.
I encourage everybody, go to wildcatsportsreport.com for all Brad and his staff, all the reporting they've got on this story. They'll be on top of it. Hey, Brad, thank you very much for the time today.
Anytime.